Hey everyone, Miditz here. A long time ago, on my old channel, ProGamerTM, I made a video about my top 5 favorite shows of all time. And I decided that I want to make a video talking about this subject. And another thing I realized was that it has been a very long time since I've done a Miditz Talks. So this is going to be a new installment in the Miditz Talks series where I'll be talking about my favorite shows. Now, while I will be following a top 5 format, I will be talking about some shows that I really enjoy beforehand. But anyway, let's wrap up this introduction and let's head on to the honorable mentions, which I want to talk about before the top 5. First of all, Pokemon, which is, a show I really love. I've been watching it ever since I was a little kid, and there are tons of great storylines and characters throughout the show, and it's also just incredible seeing Ash's character development, and you see how much he changes in between each series. And yeah, there's just a lot to the show, and all of it is great. So it's definitely one of my favorite shows. Next up is Drake and Josh. I really like this show. It's pretty much my favorite comedy-centric show because basically with Nickelodeon, pretty much everything is dialed up to 11 when it comes to absurdity. And absurd humor is probably my favorite, and this show has tons of that. And I feel like out of all the Nickelodeon shows, this is probably the one with the best writing. So yeah, it's here on this list. Next up is the Spectacular Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters of all time, and this is one of the best shows about him of all time. Everything feels so cleverly written, and I also love that it's pretty much an amalgamation of every single version of Spider-Man up to that point. And yeah, once again, definitely deserving of being on here. And lastly is Dragon Ball, since it's just a really entertaining series to watch, and it definitely has some of the best fight scenes of all time, and it's just a joy to watch. Anyway, I've talked about the honorable mentions. Now let's head to my 5 favorite shows of all time. And at number 5 is Power Rangers. Now this show is just fantastic because there's so many seasons, and pretty much the majority of them, except for a few outliers, are all just really high quality. And pretty much even the seasons which aren't considered very good still are really fun. And when it comes to some of the best seasons, they just have some incredible stories. And also, the action in this show is fun because I just like the way that the fight scenes look, and I just really love this show. Every single storyline that they put in here is really entertaining, and I definitely one day in the future want to watch some of the Super Sentai series, which Power Rangers uses footage from, because I hear that it's also really good. And yeah, if it's on the same level as Power Rangers, I definitely want to watch some of it. But yeah, Power Rangers is great. And now let's head on to the 4th series, which is Spider-Man, the animated series. Now, I have talked about this show a lot on the channel, and that's because it just is one of my favorite shows of all time. Like I said before, Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters of all time, and I feel that this version of Spider-Man is the best adaptation of Spider-Man, period. These are also some of the best adaptations of almost the entire cast, because they just feel ripped straight out of the original comics. And that's really cool when not a lot of Spider-Man media really does that, which isn't a bad thing per se, but it just really needs seeing a Spider-Man that is the most like the comics. And also, the season-long story arcs in this show are really cool, and it just has a ton of really great storylines. So yeah, this show is awesome, and it definitely deserves being in this top 5. Anyway, let's head on to the next show. In the number 3 spot is Ben 10. Now, I have seen the entire Ben 10 series, all the way from the beginning of Classic to the end of the reboot, and this is just a really fun show because, first of all, it's just a really neat concept of a superhero that pretty much has every single superpower, Like, that's a really clever idea. Another thing I want to mention about this show is that it's probably the show that feels the most like a comic book, since it has multiple different people working on the show and things are constantly changing. For better or for worse, it's a show that feels the most like a comic book. And pretty much everything's just really fun to watch. They have some really good action in this show. And yeah, there's so much to Ben 10, and that's what makes it so great. So yeah, Ben 10 is in the number 3 spot, and the second show goes to Star Wars: The Clone Wars. This probably isn't a very controversial take, but this is one of the greatest pieces of Star Wars media ever. Now, while yes, it is true that the first couple of seasons are not the best, they're more of like your standard kids show. Once it gets to season 3 and once it goes past that, the show really hits its stride and it just becomes insanely good. Like, it's so nice seeing story arcs following a bunch of the characters from the movies when we didn't really get to spend a lot of time with them, and we got to see more development from those characters. And also, a lot of the characters that were only in this show are also really great. And yeah, it's just crazy how much of a leap in quality there is once you get to season 5. This show is incredible, and if you're a Star Wars fan and you have for some reason not seen this, you need to see this. And even if you're not that big into Star Wars, you should still watch this show because it's just incredible. And now for the final show I'll be talking about today. The number 1 spot is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, honestly, what hasn't been said about this show? It is fantastic, and there's just so much to it that makes it so great that I probably wouldn't be able to talk about all of it in this video. One thing we'll talk about is just the fact that this show has a literal perfect cast of characters. There's not a single character here that's unlikable unless it is on purpose. Every single character here is just so great, and I love all the development every single character gets. I love that they even made the villains more three-dimensional, because, you know, not a lot of shows really try and do that, and that just makes it even better. And while I wish we did get to spend even more time with these characters, which is, you know, a sign that a show is good when you want to see more of it, I feel like the show just ended perfectly with a perfect amount of time so as to not drag on at all and tell a perfectly cohesive narrative. And yeah, people are not lying when they say this show is a masterpiece. So you definitely have to watch it. Dang, I just realized that the top 2 shows I had in this video are the exact same ones I had in the Pro Gamer TM video. What are the odds of that? I guess they were good enough shows that even now I still agree with what I said about those shows. And yeah, those will be all of the shows I'm talking about today. There's obviously a bunch of other shows I really enjoyed, but obviously I don't want this video getting too long. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. And if you did enjoy this video, go check out some of my other content, and if you really enjoyed this video, subscribe so you'll know when my latest content comes out. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.